President, over the weekend I reflected on an event in my life that occurred 48 years ago. On November the 24th, 1963, I had just transferred and was a sophomore at Georgetown University. It was a chilly, gray Sunday morning, and I joined a huge crowd of thousands of people in Lafayette Square, across the street from the White House, to stand in mournful silence. A few minutes after 1 o'clock that afternoon, the doors of the White House opened, and the flag-draped casket of President John F. Kennedy was carried out. The casket was placed on a horse-drawn caisson for a solemn procession right here to the U.S. Capitol. The route was lined with hundreds and thousands of mourners standing 10, 12 deep. Hardly anyone spoke. The only sounds were the clacking of horses' hooves, the sound of metal wheels on the pavement, and the muffled sounds and drums of the military escort. Coincidentally, more than 30 years later, I recounted that student experience to a colleague in the United States Senate. His name was Max Cleland from the state of Georgia, and he said to me, "Durbin, I was standing in the same corner in Lafayette Square that you were standing." He was a student at American University, there for the same reason I was, to witness history and to pay homage to our fallen president. There we were, just a few feet away from one another in Lafayette Square. But our lives took a much different course immediately after that. I went to law school, started a family, and my wife and I were blessed with 3 kids. Max Cleland enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1965 after graduating from college. Military service was a long tradition in his family. He spent 2 years in what he called a cushy job as an Army aide, and he hated it. He fought to be sent to Vietnam. In April of 1968, with less than a month left in his tour of duty, Army Captain Max Cleland found himself at the Battle of Quai San, one of the longest and deadliest battles of the Vietnam War. It was April 8th, 1968. He jumped off of a helicopter and saw a hand grenade on the ground. He thought it had fallen off his flak jacket. As he reached to pick it up, the grenade exploded, tearing off his right arm and both of his legs. Max Cleland was 25 years old. When he was recovering at Walter Reed, a friend took his doctor aside and asked in confidence, what sort of life awaits this triple amputee? What would he actually be able to do? The doctor said that if Max ever recovered enough just to put on his own shirt, that simple task would exhaust him for the rest of the day. Well, that doctor didn't understand his patient. He didn't know Max Cleland. He saw what that grenade blast had taken away from him, but he didn't see the deep reservoirs of faith, strength, and determination that remained in Max and grew stronger over time. Before his injury, Max Cleland was the golden boy of his hometown of Lithonia, Georgia. He was his parents' only child. He stood 6'2", a basketball and tennis player in high school, voted the most exceptional student during his senior year. He could have done anything with his life, but during that internship semester in Washington in 1963, Max Cleland decided he wanted to be a U.S. Senator. Nothing could kill that dream, not even the terrible explosion at Quai San that took 3 of his limbs and nearly took his life. After 8 months in VA hospitals, in rehab centers, Max Cleland went home to Georgia. In 1970, at the age of 28, he became the youngest person elected to the Georgia State Senate. At age 34, he became the youngest person ever to head up the U.S. Veterans Administration, then the Department of Veterans Affairs. During his watch, VA doctors first admitted the existence of something called post-traumatic stress disorder. Max knew it well. He knew the hell of post-traumatic stress personally, deeply. He battled it every day. As VA administrator, he fought for treatment compensation for our vets, and he struggled with visible and invisible wounds of war. In 1982, Max Cleland was elected Georgia Secretary of State, a position he held for 14 years, and during that time he gathered some of the biggest vote totals in Georgia history. When Georgia Senator Sam Nunn said in 1996 that he was retiring, Max knew it was his chance. He threw his hat in the ring, and he was elected U.S. Senator from Georgia. We came together in the Senate in 1997. When Max came to the Senate, there was no ramp for wheelchair users in the Senate. He had to make his first speech from the back of the chamber. He tucked a quote from the book of Isaiah inside his breast pocket. It was simple. Do not be afraid. He joined the Armed Services Committee, expanded education benefits for all veterans through the GI Bill, just full of energy and good cheer. I remember that warm smile and his big belly laughs. His optimism was a choice, and it required grueling regimen to maintain it. Max Cleland took 3 hours every morning to prepare himself physically and mentally to face each day. 3 hours of prayer, meditation, Bible reading, and a regimen of strenuous physical exercise which he had to design for himself. I remember the Washington Post feature on him. He'd taken a spare bedroom in his apartment, covered the floor with mattresses, and did his own workout routine, this triple amputee, each morning. For years, Max felt a sort of shame about his injuries. He hated to be called a hero because he always thought the wounds were his own fault. He always thought that he had dropped the hand grenade that nearly killed him. Took 30 years for the truth to come out. Max was telling this story on national TV when a man called in afterwards and said, "I need to talk to Senator Cleland." And he said to him, "Max, that's not how it happened at all. I know, I was there." He said another soldier had dropped the grenade, a newbie who had failed to take the precautions more seasoned soldiers took to prevent accidental detonation. The story turned out to be true, and after 30 years, Max could begin to forgive himself. Max was serving in the Senate on 9/11. Months later, the Senate was debating how to merge several agencies, offices, and departments into the brand new Department of Homeland Security. It was the biggest reorganization of the federal government since World War II and would create one of the largest departments in the federal government. Opponents of public employee unions saw it as an opportunity to take on the unions. Max and I and many others thought otherwise. We voted against an amendment that would have denied employees of the new department the same collective bargaining right as other federal workers. It was months later that Max stood for re-election in Georgia. Near the end of the race, he was the target of a now infamous 30-second television ad that showed images of Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein and went on in that 30-second ad to question Max Cleland's commitment to protect America. How do you look at a man who has lost 3 limbs in war and struggled every day of his life to serve others and accuse him of not being willing to defend his country? Max was one of 6 Vietnam veterans in the Senate at that time. All of his brothers in arms, including Republican senators, John McCain and Chuck Hagel, were furious about that ad. They raised enough hell about it that the ad was pulled. Sadly, the damage had already been done. Max Cleland lost his race for re-election. He called that loss the second big grenade in my life. In the foreword to his 2009 memoir aimed at his fellow wounded veterans, he wrote, "My body, my soul, my spirit, and my belief in life itself was stolen from me by the disaster of the Vietnam War. I found solace," he said, in attempting to, quote, "turn my pain into somebody else's gain by immersing myself in politics and public service." When his Senate years were over, he said, "I went down physically, mentally, emotionally, down into the deepest, darkest hole of my life. I had several moments when I just didn't want to continue to live." The post-traumatic stress came roaring back in his life. And so 40 years after he first arrived there, Max returned to Walter Reed to try to mend not his body, but his broken heart. It was connecting with other wounded warriors that finally pulled him out of that dark hole of despair. Thanks to many of his friends, and I want to especially salute my former colleague and close personal friend, Harry Reid. Thanks to their commitment to Max, they stood by him during this dark time. They helped him return to public service. He was appointed to the 9/11 Commission, served briefly there before accepting a position on the board of the U.S. Export-Import Bank. In 2009, President Obama chose Max to serve as Secretary of the American Battle Monuments Commission. Last week, Max Cleland died at his home in Atlanta. His big heart finally succumbed. He was 79 years old. On the same day that Max died, another veteran struggling with invisible wounds of war shot and killed himself on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Air Force Sergeant Kenneth Omar Santiago was only 31. In a note he posted on social media before he died, he said, "Nobody ever knows who is struggling or waging wars the eye cannot see. What does chronic depression even look like?" he asked. Max Cleland knew the answer to that question. If he had met Sergeant Santiago or any of the 17 veterans who die by suicide every single day in America, I think he would have told him the same thing Max told himself every day of his life. Hold on, seek help, do not be afraid. Max Cleland was a soldier, a patriot, and a friend. We can pay no better tribute to him than to honor his service and sacrifice and help those who continue to live with those wounds of war. Farewell, Max. I'll miss you. Madam President, I ask